Welcome to Chisel and Compass, where deep-rooted wisdom meets the crossroads of faith, entrepreneurship, and mindset. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and he's Dr. Justin Moseley, the Mindset Doctor. And we're here to help you refine your vision and navigate life's toughest challenges with purpose-driven strategies and real-world insights. Each episode, we're going to dive into faith-driven leadership, business growth, personal development, and the mindset shifts that drive lasting success. Now, whether you're building your business, enhancing your leadership skills, or pursuing personal growth, this podcast equips you with the tools and perspectives you need to lead with conviction and live with impact. This isn't just about where you're going, it's how you get there. So let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Chisel and Compass. Hey, I'm the real Jason Duncan, and he is
Dr. Justin Moseley, the Mindset Doctor.
And this is Chisel and Compass. We're glad that you're back listening to us. This is episode 10, Breaking the Scarcity Mindset. We're going to talk about trusting God as your source. And I want you to stick with us because there's a whole lot of talk today about mindset. And we're going to talk about this idea of scarcity. We're going to talk about abundance, of course. But really, there's something about scarcity that we kind of need to dispel some myths about it, because scarcity for those of us, especially those of us who follow Jesus, doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist. So you want to set things up for us today, Justin, and kind of tell us what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I think it starts out, yes, you're right. Scarcity doesn't exist except for in our own minds. And unfortunately, we start to believe there's not enough. And I think I've probably told this on the show before because I think we've had this conversation, but I talk with Jason a lot. We're good friends. So if I've shared this before, stay with me. But when it comes to scarcity, so a friend of mine was talking to another friend, and the friend goes duck hunting all the time, loves duck hunting. And the one friend was just so upset. And the other guy was like, well, what's wrong? He's like, man, there's some guys in our duck blind. They're killing all the ducks, and there's not going to be any next weekend. And my friend was like, is there like some dome over the duck blind? And he's like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, I mean, it sounds like there's some dome, like no other ducks can fly in or out. And he's like, no, there's not a dome. And he's like, yeah, there's no dome. There's plenty of ducks. There's ducks everywhere. And it's the same thing in life. Like we live like there's a bubble. There's only enough to go around. Like they can't be successful as well as me. Like, no, there's plenty to go around. Unfortunately, and I think a lot of times it is our mindset, it's our environment that we've grown up as. We see people winning and other people losing, so we think, no, I have to be the winner. You can't win and I can't win. No, there's enough abundance to go around for everyone.
I think there's two words I want to pull out of what you just talked about: enough and source.
Yeah,
and I think those are two good words for us to kind of look at if we're going to break scarcity mindset and trust God as our source.
Yeah.
So this idea of enough. So there's two sides to this. As a business person and as a mindset student, when I talk about enough, I don't believe there's such a thing as enough. Mm-hmm. Because it becomes, to me, more of a selfish thing. Well, I have enough for me, or I have enough.
Right.
Well, that's not what we're talking about here. So I want to kind of say, for kind of set that aside for a second. What we're talking about is their fear that there's not enough.
The lack.
Like there's a lack. So enough can be conflated wrongly, because I've had on my other podcast, The Root of All Success, I've actually talked about this idea that enough doesn't exist. But that sounds like contradicting what we're talking about today. And those are two separate ideas. What we're talking about is scarcity, when you fear that there's not something for you. So that's one word. I want to get into that. And then the other word is source. So what is the source of the things that we need, whether it's time, opportunity, money, relationships, etc.? What is the source? So enough and source are the two things that I want to look at with you. Now, we've written some scripture references down to kind of guide us on this. So Philippians 4:19, Paul writing to the Philippians, and he said, and my God will supply all your needs through his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. Yeah. It's a verse I know very well. There's a great song by a group back in the 90s that did a whole song just based on that verse. They were an a cappella group. They were really good. But this, what's that verse? What's Paul saying? Is and God, source, will supply all. That's enough. Your needs through his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. So he's got enough,
That's
and
right.
he's going to supply whatever we need.
Yeah, and I think this is one that can also be taken out of context of that he's going to supply all my selfish desires
That's
as
right.
well.
Where's
it
my
doesn't say
Lamborghini?
that. Yeah, it says supply all your needs, and it's. I was thinking as you were saying that too. Paul, even before this, says, "I know what it's like to be content in any situation, whether I have plenty or if I am lacking things, because I trust in Him, because I know He is going to be the supply." So I think we have to look at first. I do believe you should have goals, desires, all the things, because that does push you. That causes you to grow and actually be more successful in business and in life. But as a believer too, I think those desires have to line up to what's His will for my life too. Like, what am I here to do? Because we're running a race, as Paul says. We've talked a lot about Paul already. But I want to run the race and be like, hey, at the end of this race, well done, good and faithful servant. So I want my desires to line up with what are His desires for my life.
So this idea of enough, if we think about what Paul said in the Philippians, and my God will meet all your needs through His glorious riches, or through His riches and glory, however you want to say it. But He has everything. He is the creator. Like, money wouldn't exist if he didn't. Bitcoin wouldn't be a thing if He didn't start the world. The trees, the lumber, the cotton, the materials, the metals, the minerals, everything we have, the source is from Him.
Yeah.
So when we think about, well, my business didn't produce enough revenue last month, well, that might be true.
Yeah.
But that's not your source. It isn't the source of where your riches or where your needs are met.
Yeah. A lot of times in context, we put riches as money. But I think about, I heard Garth Brooks when I was younger. I remember him being interviewed, and he said, I have enough money where my grandchildren's grandchildren would never have to work in their lives. And it's just crazy. That's a constant end of supply of money. Like, I don't know what that's like as far as like being able to physically, like, if my dad was Garth Brooks and be like, hey, can I have this? Sure, boom, there it is. You want that? There it is. He has the ability to do it, but will God give it to you if it's not in alignment with what He wants in your life? No. So I think that's where it's being careful, like, oh, well, He's not the source because He didn't give me the Lamborghini, or my friend got to get a new house and I didn't. Like, no, He is the source. So I think that's where, okay, where does the mindset come into play of being aligned with, one, figuring out, wait, what do I need? And what am I called to do in my life? Because I have a friend who's a wealthy guy, and he's like, why settle to be a millionaire if God called me to be a billionaire? Because he has a big ministry and he sows seeds all over the world. But he's like, what if God's called me to go bigger? So there is this tapping into an unlimited source of, you know what? Maybe I can go bigger. We're sitting in an amazing place recording this podcast today from a guy who had a vision that started into just a small house with some dog kennels to now a global empire he's built, because there's a source. There's got to be something bigger that allows you to create stuff like this.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I didn't tell everybody, if you're watching this, that we're at Nashville Canine in Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville. Ali Himyari is the proprietor, the owner of this place. And he's going to be a guest on my podcast, my other podcast, The Root of All Success, later this afternoon. And so he's been kind enough to let us record in his place. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, you can see all these pictures of dogs in the background. That's why. Although, I mean, I like dogs well enough, but I wouldn't do this in my house. But Ali does, because this is a dog training facility. Well, so on Source, I could tell you that there have been times, many times, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I've employed hundreds of people over the years, and some good, some bad. And I know that if they were thinking about it, they would think, well, the source of their paycheck is through Jason Duncan.
Right.
Maybe not, they would never really say that, but they think, okay, Jason is the source of my income, because without this business, I wouldn't have that. Okay, and in some ways that's true, but that's not far enough up the line, because I don't get that money just by myself. So I think that in my business now, as a business coach, leading a mastermind, if I'm lacking clients, for example, if I have this idea, I don't have enough clients, and believe me, when you start, that's all you focus on. I have to remind myself sometimes that my source of my income is not clients pay me their dues to be part of my mastermind. My source is God, and God has seen fit for this season of my life to provide for me through that means, through that avenue. But that could change tomorrow. It could change next week. Right now, I hope it doesn't. I love what I do.
Yeah.
But that, I can't rely in, John or Joe or Bob or Sally or Harry to be my source as clients.
Right.
And that is a mindset shift, which is what this podcast is about. So how do we shift our mindset to where we actually think about that?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the mindset piece of the money doesn't come from the transactional, that coach paying you. It comes from the service that you give. And it goes back to when you were in your teaching days, you were serving the kids and you got rewarded for that. Now you're just serving at a different level. You're have a podcast that's going all over the world. So you're serving all over the world. But we don't do this to say, hey, we're going to put this podcast out and money's going to flow to us. Or people think that if I tithe this weekend, next week I better have my bank account full of money.
You just made a lot of people mad.
So that's not what this is about. But I do believe in the law of reaping and sowing. You have to sow the seeds. But it's not a transactional, I'm going to sow the seed into this person, that person owes me. It's no, I'm just going to serve because I serve a God of abundance, and the blessing is going to come back to me some way. And that's a mindset right there. Some people are like, I don't give to get, and I don't from that person. Like if I gave you $20, I'm not like, hey, I'm going to hold you to give me my $20 back. But I do believe in that it all comes back to you. It's going to come from me somewhere. And it might be $20, it might be $20,000 from somewhere over here. But I just believe in that abundance mindset of just serving and helping people will come back to you.
So is abundance the opposite of scarcity?
I think in this context that it would be, because the abundance is, hey, everything, the sources are, and it comes back to a mindset too. Do you have a mindset of abundance that, hey, it is an unlimited source? The opposite of that would be it's lack, it's scarce, there's not enough.
Mm-hmm. So the reason I asked that is our mutual friend, Neo Flora, who's a mindset coach inside my mastermind program, we had a masterclass yesterday, and he actually made a point of talking about and asked me in the masterclass, Jason, what's the opposite of scarcity? And of course, I knew this was going somewhere, and I said, well, I think the natural answer to that would be abundance is the opposite. But he said that the opposite of scarcity is safety. And he had to explain it, but so I want to talk about it. So this idea, which I think is good, so props to Neo for coming up with that. I think that's his thing. Yeah. But if you're scarce, you don't feel safe. You feel at risk. You feel naked and abandoned, afraid. You feel exposed. That's scarcity. Like I don't have enough. But the opposite isn't abundant, where you're Scrooge McDuck swimming in a bathroom full of $100 bills. Yeah. That's not the opposite. That is an extreme opposite.
Right.
But the opposite is just being a place of safety, which my God will meet all your needs. And you made the point earlier, is like it's not wants, it's not desires, it's needs. And really, if we listed our needs and we were honest, it wouldn't take. It's just a Post-it note, like one little Post-it note, little square. That's all our needs can fit on that. Just clothes, maybe some relationships, health, money to the extent to buy the things that you need. Yeah. But beyond that, the rest of the stuff, like the car that I have sitting out in the parking lot, not a need. The house I own in the mountains, not a need. Right. Like those aren't needs. Now, does God owe that to me? Absolutely not. So scarcity and abundance, while on opposite ends, I don't think they're the opposites, because I think abundance is way past safety, because we're not promised abundance. Right. Or are we? What do you think?
That's good. I would have to go deeper with Neo too, because that's out of context. It's hard to relate. Because we'll come back to this in another episode. We're reading through a book, and this morning I skipped ahead a little bit. So this morning I read it out, because one of the things that I've said a lot on podcasts are "you are enough," because I believe there's a lot of unworthiness going on in the world today. And the author of this book goes to the point, she says, "You are not enough." And like that's her direct statement. So she's like,
I remember reading that.
Okay, she was like, saying a statement, "I am enough," is actually detrimental. And out of context, we both could be right. Like my context is, you're enough as a believer in Jesus. Like he created you. You don't have to earn it or deserve it. You just got to believe it and receive it. So I think context is very important too in that situation, because I think either way could be right. I think scarcity and lack is that extreme to abundance and overflow. I think overflow is a good word I like to use, is from lack to overflow. I think when I think of source too, as you were talking about earlier, I was thinking like a river, like a constant source of flow, versus the creek in my backyard that can run out of water. Like that's not a true source
Yeah.
The source is that never-ending river of living water for believers.
So in Matthew chapter 6, Jesus, the great Sermon on the Mount, he said, therefore, he'd given this long, he'd been talking for a while, and he's finished and said, therefore, like based on all this stuff, don't be anxious about anything, which sounds to me like scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Don't be anxious about anything saying, what are we going to eat? Or what are we going to drink? Or what are we going to wear? He said, but seek first. He finished it by saying, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. All these things that you need, eat, drink, wear, food, clothing, shelter, those are all things that you need. Those will be given as long as you're seeking first his kingdom. So that tells us the source, again, is him. We have to keep that in mind. As businessmen and women listening to this podcast who are entrepreneurs, you have to understand that the source is not your customer. The source is not your client. Now, you have to provide a good service or product in order to get them to pay you. But they are conduits through which the source provides your income, through the conduits through which you're provided the sustenance and the needs that you have in life. And I believe, I think you agree, I'm sure, is that entrepreneurship is the coolest way to do all that because we are in control of how much of that conduit delivers to us. If we set up a business that could serve hundreds of millions of people, we're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars. If we serve dozens of people, we'll have dozens of dollars, right?
Yeah, there's unlimited ways to, let's say, make $1 million. I remember Jim Rohn back in the day, he's like, you want to make $1 million, go help 1 million people and have them pay you $1. Like, that would be easy to do. So there's different ways, and I was thinking too, like different people, like Coach Bert's got the saying, you don't need more money, you need more people, because the people have the money. It's like there's an unlimited amount of people you could serve and help. And then Grant Cardone's got the more harsher, like, who's got my money? Like, he wakes up every day thinking, who's got my money? But I think for us as believers, we think of who can we serve, because if we serve enough people, the money's going to be there.
Yeah. Well, in Luke, we're reminded, give and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. And you mentioned generosity earlier.
Yeah.
And so this idea of giving to receive, you don't give to receive, but if you give, you will receive. That's kind of it's a precursor and a prerequisite, but it isn't a direct correlation. Like, I don't give you 20 and you give me 20.
Right.
That's not how this works.
It's not a transaction.
It's not a transaction. But what we're taught here is that through generosity and through serving, great things happen. So I would say for people that are listening or watching that are in a moment of lack or season of lack, and I know that there's millions of people out there that are in that, and I've been there. Yep. And I go there once a quarter, probably, it feels like, right? When you're in that, you have to understand is that do not withdraw, do not pull back. You keep pressing forward, keep giving, keep serving, keep doing those things, because ultimately it's going to come back. Now, if you're doing it only so that you can get, you're spoiling the gift. It's not going to work. But I would say you got to be generous in the small things, or you're never going to be generous in the large things.
Yeah, I think Tony Robbins talked about that a long time ago. If you can't give 10% of $100, it's going to be real hard to give 10% of $10 million, because the amount of the check you would have to write. So it's like along the way, the more you start to give, the more you're conditioned to give. So then the more money you make, the more you can bless other people with. And I think I was thinking back to the word anxiousness, like anxious, the fear, the doubt, those are all states of being in lack. When you're in lack, you fear more of that's going to happen. And we've talked about a lot of what the feelings do. Your thoughts create feelings, and that dictates your actions. So if you're in a fearful, anxious state, you're not going to make the right decisions moving forward. You're going to make the fear, you're going to play defense. And you're going to be like, okay, how can I stop living in this lack? Versus, no, where's the opportunity? And when you can shift and be like, you know what, I don't have to be anxious because there's a promise that there's abundance around me, then I can actually look for that abundance. Versus like, no, how do I protect myself from being in this lack? No, say, okay, be real. Say, yes, my situation is this, but I have hope. There's an abundance of opportunities around me. I just need to go find them.
So there's a great story in 1 Kings 17 about the widow of Zarephath. And I've heard this story my whole life, but I had to look it up again and reread it, because I remembered highlights, but I didn't remember a lot of the details. But the story goes like this. So there had been a famine in the land for quite some time. Elijah had prophesied God's punishment on the land because of various indiscretions. And so he had promised there would be famine for quite some time, and there was. Now Elijah was being provided for miraculously by these birds bringing him food, and there was a brook there that he had access to water where there was no water, no food anywhere else. So he was being provided for. And then God comes to him and he says, listen, I've been your source. And he said, but I now want you to go do something different. The birds aren't going to bring you food anymore. You're not going to get the water from the brook. I want you to go to this little town in Zarephath, and I want you to look for this widow. And I've told her, I've already had a conversation with her, and she's going to help you. And widows were outcast in the sense that they were the least protected people in the society. They were the most vulnerable. They had the least. If they didn't have a man who would come in after the fact, after their first husband passes away, they could be left alone to die and fend for themselves. Well, in the famine, it was even worse.
Right.
So this widow's living alone with her son, and we don't know how old the son was, but we can assume he's a teenager or younger. So Elijah comes and he sees her and he says, hey, will you bring me some water? And she goes, okay. So she brings water. Hey, will you bring some bread? She says, well, I don't have any. I've got just a little flour, there's a little oil, and I was about to go back and make our last meal. My son and I were going to eat it and die. But Elijah said, don't worry about it. Get it for me anyway.
Yeah.
And this tested her faith in the source, even though she wasn't a follower of God. This is because this is in a Gentile territory. So she understood who God was, but she didn't follow him. But Elijah had such conviction in his, it's going to be fine. Just make me some bread. So she goes and makes the bread, brings it to him, and he tells her, he says, listen, that flour and that oil are not going to ever run out until this famine is over. Yeah. And sure enough, she was able to continue to feed her son bread with this oil and flour over and over and over again. Now, the story is told to illustrate lots of things, but in our context for this podcast episode is that where's the source? The source isn't the flour in the jar and the oil in the jar. The source is God providing it. Now, it is not likely that God is going to continue to provide flour and oil in the same way he did this one exceptional time, because that was an exception, but the sentiment is still true.
That's right.
I God provides me clients who pay me money to serve them.
Yep.
I get money from God through them.
Right.
That's our source. When we understand that, scarcity mindset can be broken.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the episode we did on faith too. Sometimes it's having the faith. We know there's a source, and then we have to have faith in that too, because yes, you want to take aligned actions. You mentioned clients. So yeah, you do things like you shoot content, you make funnels and websites, and they can contact you and jump on a call and become a client. And sometimes that happens that way, but sometimes, no, this person over here just reaches out to you and says, hey, I need help. So it's like, it doesn't always have to go the way we think it's going to go, because we can have faith that God can supply it because it's an unlimited source.
Yeah, and I think the scarcity, opposite of scarcity, kind of abundance thing that we talked about earlier, is that we can live in abundance when we truly understand the source. We truly understand that He is our source, and that's where it comes from. Now, again, this podcast episode, maybe more than some of the others, we're leaning way deep into our faith, and this is a faith mindset and business podcast. So forgive us if you're not on the same faith wavelength that we are, but it's really hard to understand how to get out of scarcity if you don't have faith, because otherwise, what is your source? Right. I mean, if you don't believe or follow God, what is the source? Well, the source is you. And if you're in scarcity, then you're the only one that can fix it.
That's going to lead to more scarcity.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, it's up to me to fix this. And then when you go out and try and you keep falling down, you're going to start to believe you can't fix it. And maybe that's where you need to get to and realize I can't fix it. There is a bigger source that's going to get me out of this.
So one final question for us to discuss before we close out this episode is, how can culture, and especially the church, reinforce fear-based stewardship, where we hold on tightly to these things? How is the church and our culture reinforcing that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, well, especially just the culture we've lived in the past since COVID, the whole world shutting down. I think there was a lot of scarcity that happened in that time, because there was uncertainty for sure. Like, you don't know, is the grocery store going to be open, or different things. So there was a lot of businesses, like, does my business have to shut down? And there's a lot of uncertainty there. And I think when you go through something like that, it's a shock to your nervous system. Your nervous system is designed to keep you safe. We talked about the safety earlier. So when you experience something like that, you go into fight or flight. The fight or flight is a direct response to a scarcity and lack feeling. So especially that was a traumatic thing the world went through. We all went through that. We felt the feelings of uncertainty, of potential lack. And I think people are still stuck in that. I mean, I still see people wearing masks to this day, but there is that fear that's went through the media, through whatever. There was an excess of fear that was portrayed. And I think people are still stuck in, they're taking actions out of scarcity and out of lack versus, you know what, there's abundance around us.
What was interesting as I was preparing for this, I had a conversation with ChatGPT about this issue, which I know that sounds weird, but I have conversations when I want to ideate something. I just get in there and say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. And we were talking about this, and what I kind of realized through this is this idea of saving for retirement and savings accounts. I mean, the rich fool in Luke 12 says, a man stores up wealth for himself but dies the very night. And Jesus says, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So I think, I'm not saying you shouldn't save. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that the culture that we live in, and the church can reinforce this, is teaching us to save for this future. And don't spend frivolously, or don't do things because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, rainy days. And I understand that from a practical standpoint, but I think that's living by our own understanding of we're the source.
Right.
Like we have to. If I don't save $10 million by the time I turn 65, I'm not going to be able to retire. Well, wait a minute. Really? Who's the source? Your 401k, Edward Jones? Like what is your source?
Yeah.
Now, the one pendulum swing to the other direction could be, well, then don't ever worry about it. Spend everything you got, and God, you just trust God to take care of you. I think there's a center spot in the middle that, appropriate, pragmatic, but not in a fear. You can't save it in fear or scarcity because, man, I won't have enough. And a lot of people, our parents' age, are still living through that, and their parents for sure, because they came through the Depression. But that's not good. God tells us, my God will meet all your needs through his glorious riches in Christ Jesus. Your needs are going to be taken care of, period.
Yeah. And same with you. It's like, I'm not saying don't save, but also I know a guy who his business partner, they had built a great business, and his business partner died in a helicopter crash very young. So it was like he had his whole life potentially ahead of him that he was saving for retirement. Dave Ramsey quote, live like no one else so one day you can live like someone else. Well, what if that one day doesn't come in this life to enjoy the wealth you were storing up for later on? So I think you need to do the things. You and your wife just went on a trip. Me and my wife are leaving tomorrow for a trip. Like, enjoy life while you save and do the other things. But same thing with your faith. Don't live a reckless life, self-centered now, thinking one day I'll give my life to Jesus and turn from my wicked ways. It's like, no, start living right now, preparing for eternity.
Well, I hope that this conversation has helped you, dear listener or viewer, to kind of understand the scarcity mindset and how we need to break that mentality, because, first of all, it does bad things for you. Scarcity mindset never leads to anything good. But also because God is our source. All things are going to be provided through him that we need. Ferraris, swimming pools, those things are not needs. They're nice, and believe me, I haven't had a Ferrari for a swimming pool, but I've had these nice things, and I have some today. Those are great, but those are not needs. Those are not promised. But everything you need, which would fit on a Post-it note, will be provided through the source. And if you have that mindset, I think you're going to be all right. Now, that also means that, as we've discussed, some of us are going to be conduits through which God is going to provide tremendous financial resources that can do great things in the world. So I hope that scarcity mindset will not be part of your life moving forward. Thank you for listening, watching this episode today. Make sure you tune in again when we talk about another mindset, business, or faith issue. I think probably in our next episode, we might dive a little bit deeper into some mindset stuff. He mentioned it, and we'll tease it out. We're reading the book Happy Lies by, I can't remember her name, Melissa Doherty.
Yes.
Melissa Doherty. And we've been reading it together, and we want to dive into that in some future episodes. Well, probably just one. I don't know if we need to go into multiples, but we're going to dive into it in a future episode. I don't know if it'll be our next one, but tune in, because we're going to look at mindset, and we're going to talk about some business. And of course, today we talked a lot about faith. So thanks for listening. I am the real Jason Duncan, and he is
Dr. Justin Moseley.
And this is Chisel and Compass. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And always remember, Jesus is King. That's a wrap on Chisel and Compass for today. For show notes, resources, and more, hit up chiselandcompass.com and follow us on social media. You can find me at The Real Jason Duncan, and you can find Justin at Dr. Justin Moseley. Until next time, keep your chisel sharp, your compass true, and never stop building what matters. This is Chisel and Compass.